Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke, and this is my podcast, Ambient 3D Animations. Today we are going to talk about turbulence inside of the scene settings for Pyro and how that works. It's a little bit different than vorticity that we talked about in the last episode. So let's go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D and get started. So the main difference between these two is that you have greater control over your noise structure with the turbulence options inside the scene settings. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. First, we'll need to add an emitter to our scene. So I'll add in a sphere here, and I'll adjust it to be 50 centimeters instead, so it's a little bit smaller. I'll right-click on it and add a Pyro emitter. And we'll automatically get a Pyro output because we've added in the Pyro emitter. Now, if you are interested in learning more about the Pyro emitter tag, the Pyro output, or the simulation scene object, you can check out the other episodes for that. I'll leave a link to them in the description. But now, since we've added in a Pyro emitter tag, we can press play and we'll see a fire form in our viewport. So there we go. We've got our fire going, and I'm going to click Control D or Command D for Mac users out there, Command D. And we'll go into the simulation settings, Pyro, and I'll scroll down. You'll see our extra forces. We've already covered our general forces, and below that you'll see turbulence. So this is what we're talking about today, but in order to see it clearly, I'm going to turn off the vorticity here. So this is no longer controlling that. And now all that we should be seeing in our scene is turbulence. So let's start off with the strength. You can adjust the strength of the turbulence in here. And you can see right now that even as I increase this, the turbulence looks pretty smooth. The density looks really smooth. And if you turn off this smooth spatially, it'll stop trying to smooth this out so much. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll see this becomes a little bit less smoothed out. It's a little bit more jagged looking. So you can choose between these two options. It really depends on what your simulation is, how you'd like it to look. So you can choose to have it smoothed out or not. If you turn this off, sometimes you get in some more detail. The smoothing can reduce some of the detail in the simulation. So in some ways, it might be easier to see your octaves with this turned off. And we'll talk a little bit about what octaves are here in a moment. I'm going to reduce the strength of this a little bit. Let's try 90. So another interesting thing about this is that you can adjust the seed. So that's the randomization of the turbulence itself. The turbulence is controlled with a noise. So you could see that we have our seed here, and if I just click and drag my mouse, it'll change. And maybe it'd be easier to see if I turn this up a little bit. So this is with the seed at this. If I randomize this again, you can see it looks a little bit different. So it adjusts how the turbulence looks, and you can try different amounts in here to get different looks. So this scaled with velocity option, when it's checked on, the faster moving parts of the simulation will be swirled a little bit more by the turbulence. And you can adjust how much that is with this velocity factor here. So if you increase this, the faster moving parts will be swirled more. That's a little bit much. I'm going to take that down a bit. So you can control that here. Sometimes I find it helpful to think of the noise in two parts. You have your main noise structure that's a little bit bigger, and then you have this other part of the noise called octaves. And it's like a smaller, more detailed pattern overlaid on top of the larger noise pattern. So you'll see your octaves down here. Right now we have 4. If I decrease this, it'll get rid of those really fine details, or there's really fine swirls in the smoke. So I'll decrease this to 1, and you'll see it looks a little bit different. If I increase the octaves back to, let's actually make it larger, like 7, you can really see that you're getting those finer smoky details, but it's also going faster because of this velocity factor. So I might turn off this just so that we can see the octaves a little bit more without that affecting it. So again, this is with one octave. And then if we increase this to 8 and have it start over, you could see that it's getting some more of those finer details in there. You can adjust the frequency of the noise, so how quickly that noise changes, because this noise is actually animated. The larger noise and the octave noise, so that you get this nice movement in your pyro simulation. So you can adjust the frequency. If I increase this, it'll move a little bit faster. You can see that it's a little bit of a faster pace, that swirling look is happening, you could say. I'll put this back to the default by right-clicking on the left arrow. So now it's back at 1. You can adjust the initial octave scale, and I think of this as your larger noise pattern is what they're referring to, the larger noise pattern before you get these details added with the octaves. So right now that's set at 800% as the scale. If we make it smaller, you'll see that the noise just becomes smaller and more detailed. And you can right-click on this to set it back to default, so I'll go ahead and do that. And now it's starting over again at the default. We have this other option here called incremental octave scale. And this would adjust the scale of the smaller detailed octave. So not the large noise pattern, but the smaller noise pattern that's being overlaid in that. So I'll go ahead and make this smaller. And you can see that's a much finer noise pattern. So you can control both of those separately. I just increased it, and now it's much larger, kind of swirling movement. There's this other option down here called incremental octave strength. And this one is interesting. I'm actually going to set the incremental octave scale back to the default by right-clicking on this arrow. So numbers below 1, let me press play. For numbers below 1, the larger noise pattern will be stronger than the smaller noise pattern. If you make this larger than 1, that will be reversed. Actually made it too big. Let me take that back a little bit. Let's try 1.3. I'm going to restart this. So that's what's being controlled, is the strength of what part of the noise pattern. I might try 1.2 and take this back. That's a really cool shape. And that just about wraps up today's episode on the Turbulence. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe if you'd like to be notified of more episodes that come out about 3D modeling or Pyro. Please hit the bell so that you'll be notified when they do come out. And thank you so much for taking the time to do some Pyro simulations with me. I always appreciate it.